William Penn named Pennsylvania in honor of his father by combining the surname Penn with the Latin term Sylvania, which translates to woodlands. Put together, we get the rough translation of Penn's woods that many recognize today. More than 17 million acres, or nearly 60% of the Commonwealth, is covered by quality hardwood forest that is quoted by our state forester to be perhaps unequaled in the world. These woods are home to hundreds of species of native plants and wildlife that act as a symbol of the natural world Pennsylvanians know and love today as we play and explore outdoors. With that, there is a battle that our beautiful native species are fighting every day, often going unnoticed as they fight to keep their ground and ours. The opponent? Invasive species. But what exactly is an invasive? An invasive species is recognized by the U.S. Forest Service by a handful of characteristics, which begin with them being non-native, also known as exotic or alien, to the ecosystem that they occupy, and that their existence in that ecosystem causes or is likely to cause harm to the economy, environment, or human health. If left unchecked, invasive species can threaten native species, biodiversity, ecosystem services, recreation, water resources, agricultural and forest production, cultural resources, economies and property values, public safety, and infrastructure. Before further elaboration, it is important to understand that some exotic species are in fact fundamental to our lifestyle. Most of our food crops, such as corn, potatoes, and wheat, are not native to the United States. Invasive species are those that have gone beyond being useful and have become harmful in the ways mentioned previously. This short film is intended to provide basic facts to fellow Pennsylvanians on a handful of the common, native, and invasive species found in Penn's woods. Join me in investigating the invasives that challenge our homegrown heroes. To begin, the American sycamore. These massive trees, native to Pennsylvania, can be found on stream banks and in floodplains, attaining heights up to 120 feet or more. They are recognized as a major pioneer species in the floodplains of large rivers, meaning they are one of the first to colonize a disrupted area after a flood. Sycamores are known to provide shade and cover for riparian shrubs and herbaceous flowering plants. These trees can be easily distinguished from others by their mottled or camouflage-looking bark that flakes off in irregular masses. As American sycamores age, they may develop hollow trunks that provide shelter for a handful of wildlife species. Some large, old individuals have even formed cavities big enough to be used as dens by black bear. Can you spy the invasive peeking through this frame? Multiflora rose, an aggressive, invasive shrub that can develop into impenetrable thorny thickets. This plant was intentionally introduced from Asia and widely promoted as a living fence for erosion control and as a food and cover source for wildlife. Although multiflora rose does provide cover and some food value with its fleshy fruit, it's quite clear why this invasive is not all sunshine and roses, as its overall effect on habitat value is negative. Not only does this shrub outcompete native plants by taking up valuable space, sunlight, and nutrients, but it has a habit of climbing over trees and weighing them down, often resulting in damage to native species. Individual plants can easily grow more than 10 feet tall and wide and produce over 1 million seeds each year. When the tips of the stems touch the ground, they can take root and form a new crown. If near trees, the rose behaves almost like a vine and can grow 20 feet into the tree. Named after the skunk-like smell given off when its leaves are crushed or bruised, skunk cabbage is a perennial wildflower that grows in swampy, wet areas of forest. It is often the first native plant to bloom for the year, partly due to the unique chemistry the plant possesses that creates its own heat, often melting the surrounding snow when it begins to pop up in late February. Their tiny flowers are arranged in a knob-shaped cluster known as the spadix, which sits inside a purple, brown, and green mottled hood that is 2 to 5 inches long. The large, egg-shaped leaves have a heart-shaped base and unfold after the plant blooms. In general, the leaves are known to be irritating or even toxic when consumed. However, some species of wildlife, such as Canada geese and black bears, have been observed consuming the leafing in early spring when the leaves are young and just unfurling. The deep root system in the skunk cabbage helps to provide stability in very damp areas where most plants would be unable to survive. The culprit seemingly suffocating our native skunk cabbage here is the invasive common or orange daylily, which was introduced in the US in the late 19th century as an ornamental. It is a popular plant favored by homeowners and landscape designers for its showy flowers, hardiness, and ability to spread. However, these pretty plants can pose a real threat to native plants when established in natural areas. Native to Asia, orange daylily now occurs in every state in the eastern US. Although the showy flowers don't bloom until summer, their grass-like leaves are one of the first to appear in the spring. Once established, orange daylily spreads to form dense patches that displace native plants, which has proven a serious problem in sensitive habitats with high diversity, such as river floodplains. The thick tubers that are found buried under a dense mat of vegetation make orange daylily a challenge to control. This delicate, low-lying flower of the moist woods certainly lives up to its name. Spring beauty is one of the first native wildflowers to pop up in spring, with a pair of grass-like leaves on the stem and pink or white flowers decorated with darker pink veins. The perennial is especially spectacular in large patches growing from an underground tuber or corm, like a small potato that has a sweet chestnut-like flavor. Native Americans and colonists use them for food, and they are still enjoyed by those interested in edible wild plants today. Insects such as bees and flies frequently visit the flowers for nectar and pollen, and small rodents may dig up and eat the corms. The foliage is also an occasional food source of white-tailed deer. Recognized to be a rather adaptable species, the absence of these beautiful flowers from woodlands is said to indicate that the habitat has been subjected to severe degradation due to human exploitation. Japanese barberry. This dense, spiny shrub with oval leaves is a fast-spreading species introduced into the U.S. as an ornamental plant in 1875 that promoted as a substitute for the latter European barberry, which was used by settlers for hedgerows, dye, and jam making. It is unfortunately still widely planted for landscaping and hedges, which can get out of control when accidentally brought into natural habitats, where it forms dense stands. Like multiflora rose, barberry can also spread by rooting from branches touching the ground. It is easy to identify in spring because it is one of the first shrubs to leaf out. This invasive produces a large number of seeds with a high germination rate that are dispersed by birds and small mammals that feed on the bright red berries that develop. Although this may be seen as good, it is most certainly outweighed. Once established, it displaces native plants and reduces wildlife habitat and forage, which increases pressure on native species by white-tailed deer. Barberry is also a recognized human health hazard, not only for its sharp spines, but because it acts as a nursery for deer ticks, which can transmit Lyme disease. This characteristic deciduous hardwood species native to Pennsylvania is commonly found in areas with moist, rich soils and can grow over 100 feet tall. Winter emphasizes the tree's noticeable attributes exhibited by juveniles, as some of their dead toothed leaves hang on through winter. Even if no leaves are to be found, beech trees can be recognized by their long, thin, pointed brown leaf buds and smooth gray bark. The tree plays an important role in the forest ecosystem, as the hard mast, known as beech nuts, that they produce proves as a valuable food source for wildlife such as black bear, squirrels, turkey, and grouse. Autumn olive is a deciduous shrub that can reach heights of 20 feet and is another aggressive invader of roadsides, pastures, abandoned agricultural land, forest edges, and other disturbed habitats. It is one of the first shrubs to leaf out in spring. Listed as a noxious weed throughout much of its range, this hardy shrub was originally introduced as an ornamental in the mid-1800s for its silvery foliage, showy flowers, and colorful berries. It creates dense shade that blocks out sunlight to the plants below, outcompeting native species. Though abundant, the fruit are of low nutritional value to wildlife in comparison to the native shrub species they displace. Arriving in woodlands during early spring, the distinct leaves of the trout lily might remind you of our state fish, the brook trout. This small yellow wildflower blooms, produces fruit, and dies back just before the canopy trees above fully leaf out. This strategy is shared with the spring beauty and allows them to take full advantage of sun hitting the forest floor. Trout lily is both medicinal and edible, though they are an emetic, which makes you throw up. Therefore, it is recommended not to eat mass quantities of these in one day. You can add this plant to a salad or eat them as a trail snack. You can also make tea with the flower, leaves, or corm. The value of this species to wildlife is limited, though deer will eat the seed capsules and black bear are known to dig up and eat the corms. Though for the eastern chipmunk, the trout lily has been found to be a mainstay of their diet. Nonetheless, this beautiful spring wildflower is a sure sign of spring and is certain to add to the magic of Penn's woods. A less desirable yellow flower popping up just before the trout lily is lesser celandine, a perennial herbaceous plant that forms thick, low-growing mats. It is characteristic of moist soils and forested floodplains. Introduced as an ornamental, the plant is native to places such as Eurasia, northern Africa, and Siberia. Although still commercially available, all varieties should be assumed to be invasive. The thick mats formed easily displace native spring wildflowers, which in turn negatively affects native pollinators that rely upon native wildflowers for nectar and pollen during times when other food sources are scarce. Close attention during identification is important, as lesser celandine does have a native lookalike, marsh marigold. This goes to show that many native alternatives to this commercial ornamental are available and should gain our attention over this aggressive invader. Known as the father of Pennsylvania forestry, Dr. Joseph Rothrock stated, "If Pennsylvania were to select one tree as a characteristic of our state, nothing would be better than the hemlock." In 1931, the eastern hemlock was designated as the official state tree. This state symbol thrives in cool, moist environments and occupies steep north or east-facing slopes in southern counties, where further north it forms nearly pure stands in ravines, stream valleys, and wooded swamps. This large, long-lived conifer can grow to be more than 400 years old, reaching heights of 140 feet. Hemlock has been a major contributor to the state's economy over the centuries, but hemlock trees provide so much more than wood. Their dense, evergreen branches provide shelter for valuable forest songbirds, while their deep shade keeps streams cool, providing the cold water aquatic habitat favored by native brook trout. Wildlife such as red squirrels and black-capped chickadees consume large quantities of hemlock seed. This priceless component of Penn's woods is threatened by the hemlock woolly adelgid, a tiny insect that feeds on the hemlock sap, causing the needles, branches, and eventually the entire tree to die. You can do your part to keep this important piece of state history alive by opting to plant one of the hundreds of ornamental varieties in your own backyard. So you may be asking, what can I do? In all honesty, invasives can be very difficult to control, but you've already taken a step in the right direction by watching this video. Learning to identify invasive plants is the first step in understanding and combating the problem. The PA Department of Conservation and Natural Resources recognizes the following as other ways to combat the invasive battle. Plant natives. The key to controlling invasives is to promote healthy native plant communities. By doing so, invasives will have less opportunity to invade. Planting native species using local nurseries that provide native alternatives and choosing the right species for the site can all help limit invasives. Know your property. Check your property often. Know what is normal and what isn't. Scouting and monitoring can help find problem species before they take hold. When you notice a problem species, take action. Act fast. It is most effective to treat invasive populations when they're still small and easily controllable. For instance, do not let invasive plants go to seed. Mechanical removal through digging or cutting is preferred. Large populations of invasives may need to be stopped chemically with spot applications of herbicide by trained individuals or by homeowners carefully following label instructions. Have a plan. It makes sense when designing a property to plan for future maintenance. Lawns are maintained by weekly mowing, while gardens are often hand-weeded. Meadows in Pennsylvania may need to be mowed every year, while woodlands are probably the lowest maintenance landscape, but they too will need to be monitored and invasive plants removed. A service forester or extension service personnel can help you. Clean your boots and equipment. When you're out and about, be aware that you may be transporting hitchhikers. Now that we know better, we can do better. So what are you waiting for? Get outside and enjoy Penn's woods. Thank you for watching.